Yeah, this is the especially horrifying part of this. Before the pool entered, this exchange was captured on the El Salvador government's live stream. Trump endorses sending homegrown U.S. prisoners to El Salvador, meaning American citizens to notorious foreign prisons.
People wanted to change their weapons, and they wanted they demanded, they love you, they love what you do. I'm not for your support. I want them to do, homegrown criminals next. Yeah. I said, homegrowns are next. The homegrowns, you got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair. All right.
He says the homegrown ones are next. You guys built about 5 more spaces. He goes, yeah, we got space. It's not a Twitter video issue. This is not supposed to be live, chat. This is a hot mic. This is a hot mic, okay? This is not, we were not supposed to hear this. Before, as Jonathan Lemire, co-host of the Morning Show, says, this is before the pool entered. This exchange was captured on the El Salvador government's live stream. Trump endorses sending homegrown U.S. prisoners to El Salvador, meaning the American citizens to notorious foreign prisons. And it's not even just a hot mic. I believe this is something that the Trump administration has talked about already. It's something that Bukele has talked about already. So that's it. To be fair, he said it before. He said it shortly thereafter in the press pool too. Yeah. It's not something that they're hiding. Sure. Here's a question. Are you deporting Are you considered deporting American citizens to El Salvador? Trump says, yeah, that includes them. You think they're a special type of people or something?
Open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S.
People on Twitter are already defending it. We're so fucking cooked. Yeah. I mean, they're Nazis. There's not really anything else I can say about that. That's it. It's here. It's happening. They're fucking fascists. They're really horny for this kind of violence. They don't really consider that this kind of violence may actually impact them in the long run. I don't know. This is every single day that goes by. Like, I joke about it being Burger Reich or whatever, but like, it's not really a joke. These guys are actually straightforward, blood-curdling fascists. They are baying for blood. They want it. They're excited at the prospect for this kind of structure to become legally calcified. They want to test the boundaries. They're testing the boundaries right now in terms of like what they can get away with. They've already eradicated any sort of mechanism of pushback. There's not a lot of work you can get. Like, one of the most important and yet like somewhat quiet actions that the Trump administration took was against law firms. Okay. And we obviously covered it here, but there wasn't like that much anger or resentment towards this, partially because it's like there's outrage fatigue. It's impossible to pay attention to all the things that they're doing. But the reason why it was very significant, the reason why Donald Trump's attacks against law firms was very significant is because they basically came in and said, if you don't do pro bono work for us, we won't let you into federal buildings. And if you can't go into a federal building, you can't practice law. Like, you can't talk to your clients. Like, they basically said, you have to, you can't go against us. There are very few law firms that are still capable or interested in fighting back against them, against this government. Please stop. I don't care about the CCOT facility thing right now, okay? I know. This is like...
I just saw this video.
Are these bodies and blood? I know. It's the CCOT facility. Does it have bodies and blood? Is that what it is? Once again, eyes on the prize here. You guys always hyper-focus. Liberals have this fundamental inability to understand larger schemes that are happening in broad daylight, where they have to focus on like some kind of conspiratorial aspect to all of this, okay? Please stop. Lock in. I don't even know if that is real. I don't even know if they're just like fucking killing people, assassinating them, and just like dumping them into a mass grave in the way that people are talking about. But I do know that they are doing horrifying torture. We know that already. We've seen it. It's not like they're hiding that part of it. Bro, pay attention on taxes on USA law firms. Regular folk don't know the importance. Anyway, But why send criminals to another country? I thought our prisons were for profit and want as many as possible. I think that the CCOT alignment is going to work where Eric Prince, from what I've read, Eric Prince Academy, right? Like private mercenaries are going to take over some of the logistics from the Department of Homeland Security. That's number one. Number two, they're most likely going to do a joint partnership with American corporations, I suspect, like American private prison corporations, where they can open up these facilities or manage these facilities, these concentration camps, for pennies on the dollar, as opposed to having them operate on U.S. soil, where there are at least some kind of constitutional hurdles that they have to avoid. So I suspect that they will utilize they'll utilize El Salvador, purchase the land, engage in a land lease agreement with the Salvadoran government, and it will still be like, American private prison corporations will make money off of this, I suspect. By sending them to another country, it becomes foreign policy too. That's what Trump has started saying. Yeah. There's a bunch of reasons as to why sending them to El Salvador is a benefit for a fascist administration like this. And we're seeing it. One of the benefits from their perspective is, well, we can't return them. Even when the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, says you have to return this person, you were not supposed to send this person. This person is an active withdrawal. As in, due process kicked in. He went through the court system. The American government literally cleared this Maryland resident, cleared a higher standard of proof to get a withdrawal to El Salvador. As in the asylum application beyond that is easier to prove. It is harder to prove a withdrawal to El Salvador than it is to get an asylum application through. Okay? That's precisely the reason why the Supreme Court gave a unanimous decision on the facilitation of the return of this, or withdrawal, withholding, sorry. Thank you, Jay Mershon. Like, there are different mechanisms to defend yourself against, like, deportation. A withholding of removal to El Salvador, which is where he's from, is a de facto harder to prove in courts than getting an asylum application done. And it means de facto that, like, you're not supposed to remove this person. You're not supposed to deport this person. Or even if this person was to, I don't know, do something heinous, right? Like a deportable crime, they would not be able to deport him to El Salvador. They would deport him somewhere else. But this person never did that, for the record. He's not a part of any gang. He has, as far as I understand, there's no crime that he's committed. And yet, the actual crime that was committed in this process was done by the government, which then admitted to the wrongdoing. Anyway, let's continue with this, and then we'll do.
Citizens fully naturalized American.
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What do you think? There's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have.
With a simple administrative error, the U.S. now has wholesale SCOTUS approval to illegally detain and deport any U.S. citizen that they want. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, Donald Trump is now entertaining the notion of kidnapping, blackbagging, and shipping off American natural-born U.S. citizens to a different country. This is new. This is new territory. A lot of the stuff that they're doing is new territory, for the record. Straw man argument too strong. It's not even a straw man. There is no straw man that he's engaging in. He just like made up a couple cases that are gruesome in his mind and said, yeah, we're going to ship those guys off to El Salvador. Okay, we're going to ship those guys off to the El Salvador torture slave facility. Aaron Rupar spread propaganda against Bangladesh. Why are you following him? I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, but follow policing Aaron Rupar is pretty funny. Yeah, he just is a compiler of all these clips. Yes. I didn't even know that was a thing that he had done, but that's pretty funny. I don't agree with Aaron Rupar. I follow him because he does this. He clips stuff. That's all he's good for.
You said that if
aren't people just going to revolt if this admin goes full fascist like this? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. Especially on this stuff. On the deportation stuff, I think a lot of people are utterly oblivious. They are utterly oblivious to the actions that this administration is taking. And I think on the Israel stuff, on the deportation stuff, which goes hand in hand, it is far more consequential than the fucking trade wars, okay? And this isn't to say that like the tariffs and the exemptions are not consequential. It's far more consequential than the Doge cuts, which isn't to say that those Doge cuts aren't consequential. But this, ironically enough, this thing that not enough people are paying attention to is far more significant for our future. Because the reality of the matter is, you do the Doge cuts, people revolt, okay? People rise up. Let's say they fire every federal employee, right? And then the people go, what the fuck are you doing? You just fired every single person. How dare you? You start protesting in the street. His administration comes in and black bags key leadership in those protests, and they ship him off to El Salvador. Boom. All of a sudden, there's nothing. You can't do anything. There's no free speech anymore at this point. There's no due process anymore at this point. And when you get deported to the CCOD facility, you have no way of return. So it doesn't even matter. It is one of due process and First Amendment rights are the most consequential remaining the most consequential remaining protections that we have that they are actively destroying. And ironically, the sad state of affairs is that many of these people are either completely oblivious to this stuff. I've been ringing the alarm bells on this for quite a while now. And I think that most Americans are completely either A, oblivious to this shit, or B, perhaps even worse than being oblivious, the ones who are knowledgeable about what's going on here are in support of it. They are championing it. It's a truly terrifying predicament.
if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning?
Yeah. You said this. You said that if SCOTUS says someone needed to be returned, you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. Why don't you say, isn't it wonderful we're keeping criminals out of the country? Like, that's his reaction to this. Is you are in violation of the Supreme Court orders. Here, we'll just watch the full thing. But basically, the question is, Mr. President, you are directly in violation of the Supreme Court orders. What do you have to say about this? And his response is, it's great. It's great that we're keeping terrorists out of this country. By the way, for the record, there is no evidence whatsoever. There's only evidence to the contrary. Okay? Of this wrongly deported U.S. man, this Maryland this Maryland resident, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. There is no evidence whatsoever that he's in MS-13. There's only evidence to suggest that he is directly in the crosshairs of MS-13. And yet, and this is something that the federal government has also personally acknowledged. And yet they still, on the one hand, say he's MS-13, and then also on the other hand, say there's no way we can bring him back.
With you because you want to stop crime, and so do we. And it's very, very effective. And I want to just say hello to the people of El Salvador and say they have one hell of a president. Okay, and I mean that, and I know him well. I know him as a very young man, Marco, even younger than you. You know, he started pretty young.
He'll always be younger.
Young at heart. But I want to thank you for the great job you're doing. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to be here in the Oval Office with the President and leader of the free world. We're very happy, and we're very eager to help. We know that you have a crime problem, a terrorism problem that you need help with. And we're a small country, but if we can help, we can do it. And we actually turned the murder capital of the world, that was the journalists call it, right? Murder capital of the world, into the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. And, you know, sometimes they say that we imprison thousands. I like to say that we actually liberated millions. So, you know, like,
That's very good. Who gave him that line? Do you think I can use that?
yes. And in fact, Mr. President, you have 350 million people to liberate.
Yeah.
But to liberate 350 million people, you have to imprison some. You know, that's the way it works, right? You cannot just, you know, free the criminals and think crime is going to go down magically. You have to imprison them so you can liberate 350 million Americans that are asking for the end of crime and the end of terrorism. And it can be done. I mean, you're doing it already. And I'm sure that people have seen the change.
Why is he sucking Trump / America's boot? What do you mean? This is the dream for him. Everybody knows that if you want to have a permanent dictatorship till the end of time, you, especially in a Latin American country, you have to be America's dog. That's how you get all the benefits. You get money, you get political support. That's it. These are all of his wishes being realized in broad daylight in real time. Bukele has been able to generate a lot of goodwill, partially as a consequence of how violent MS-13 was, and how much people were, you know, how much people just could not deal with the impact of MS-13's violence, and basically turned his police apparatus into a gang that is even more powerful than MS-13, partially while collaborating with MS-13, potentially collaborating with MS-13 as well. This is the suspicion that people have.
In the streets, a long way to go because you're just initiating your second term, but it's clear that, you know, with the numbers.
What is this? Oh my God, you guys shit on Bukele way too much. Yeah, he's authoritarian, but you guys don't shit on Xi Jinping like this. Brother, what the fuck are you talking about? What kind of industrial policy has Nayib Bukele implemented in El Salvador? Like, what do you mean? He's just like a straightforward right-wing dipshit fascist. Like, that's it. His claim to fame here is basically building slave labor prisons and holding people unjustifiably in said slave labor prisons, like no due process whatsoever. Virtually every single humanitarian organization has been writing extensively about the CICOT facility and how horrifying it is. I think the horrifying aspect of CCOT in and of itself is obvious to everyone, right? You either get put into the slammer where you have no daylight, you don't see any light whatsoever, you're in pitch black darkness, isolated from everybody else, or when you're not, when you're in general population, you're under constant surveillance and constant light where you can't even sleep. Okay, sleep deprivation is the norm in these facilities. But outside of that, you have very little opportunity to speak with the outside world, very little opportunity to speak with your lawyers, and no way to combat an unjustifiable imprisonment. You don't have to sympathize with MS-13 in this process. You have to recognize that, one, these are torture facilities, okay? And two, more importantly than the fact that these are torture facilities, the people that are being put into these torture facilities, it's because Hasan can't relate. He never went when crime was rampant. Oh, yeah. He got rid of crime. I don't know. You think you understand how bad it was? Chatters, please, for the love of Christ and all things holy, listen to my words, okay? I'm explaining why people still believe in Bukele. And I'm also telling you how fucking stupid it is to make the assumption that crime is gone now. It's done in El Salvador. It doesn't exist. When you got the government doing the fucking crime. What will it take for one of your fucking family members to get black bagged and falsely considered to be MS-13 for you to go, okay, maybe this wasn't the best idea? He imprisoned 2% of the fucking population, dude. What are we talking about? There's already plenty of evidence to show that his police force goes in. Yeah, that's why I said my family's from El Salvador. Yes, dumb fuck. That's why I said, what will it take when one of your family members gets fucking black bagged and sent to CCOT and you know that they're not a part of MS-13? Well, is that when you will comprehend what is happening? I'm not saying the situation was better in the past. I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply stating that the heavy-handed nature of these apprehensions and the lack of due process and the torturous conditions within the facilities implies that the criminal leadership has exchanged hands. It went from MS-13 to fucking Nayib Bukele. Salvadoran that studies violence here. First of all, double fuck Bukele forever and always. And I doubt Kilmer is dead, despite what TikTok believes. And if he is, then it was the state that killed him. People overlooked that in CCOT, rival gangs are incarcerated next to each other. And there has not, to my knowledge, been an issue with that. Instead, the state has been responsible for killing and torturing people. Yeah. There's also suspicion that Bukele himself, in a deal not dissimilar to like previous deals that Mexican leadership have done with the cartels, most likely also cut a separate side deal with MS-13 as well, which is part of the reason why he wanted the American MS-13 leadership that was apprehended to be sent expeditiously to El Salvador before they were able to make public statements about the collaborative nature of MS-13 and Nayib Bukele. I feel like gang unity might arise because of such horrific treatment. I mean, there's not really much you can do. It's a concentration camp. Yeah. This is the size of El Salvador overlaid over Dallas, Texas. Why would we send anyone there besides nefarious reasons? Is Guantanamo, without having to talk to Cuba, it's ideal for Trump? Exactly. You think we don't have facilities to deal with this shit? Of course we do. It's just this way you get to wash your hands over the death camp happening on U.S. soil. Did you not see that I said only the worst are sent to CCOT and the rest focus on rehab? CCOT is the worst? No, you're wrong. You're just, I think you're delusional. You're absolutely wrong. No, it's not the worst of the worst that are sent to CCOT, dumb fuck. What are you talking about? That's the entire problem here. No, it's random people, random street vendors, for example. It's whoever the fuck the police decide is MS-13, and there's no due process. That's kind of the whole problem here happening in America as well. You're just making shit up. No, Nayib Bukele initially wanted to focus on rehabilitation, focus on solving the underlying economic problems where crime manifests. That's true. That is how Nayib Bukele actually rose to power, and then very quickly was like, yeah, fuck all that. They literally grab people for tattoos, even if it's not MS-13 related tattoos. They grab people for being street vendors if they've been threatened by MS-13. It has nothing to do with actual MS-13 gang activity. The idea that it's like the most rugged of the MS-13 criminals that are being shipped into the facility is wrong. And that is just for the Salvadorans. Like, we're not even talking about the people that we've shipped over there. Okay? It's outlined in this article. El Salvador named one of the world's safest countries. At what cost? El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele declared an initial month-long state of emergency in March 2022 due to heightened gang violence and a wave of murders, according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. So far, the state of emergency has been renewed 30 times, the latest of which was announced by the Salvadoran Legislative Assembly on October 4th. To date, this tool has allowed 604 days without homicides and the arrest of more than 82,000 people linked to gangs. In addition, it has positioned the country among the safest in the world. The state of emergency suspended several Salvadoran rights and freedoms as per the OAS. 1. Right of assembly, freedom of association, right to be informed of the reasons for detention, inviolability of correspondence and telecommunications. Regardless, the entity does recognize a constant decrease in homicide cases, with the rate per 100,000 people going from 21.2 in 2020 to 4.9 in 2023. Okay? The alleged human rights violations. El Salvador has been called out for massive human rights violations, including thousands of arbitrary detentions and violations of due process, as well as torture and ill treatment, according to Amnesty International. In a report published on December 2023, the organization detailed a rise in systematic detentions, forced disappearances, and instances of torture since the introduction of the state of emergency. There's also suspicion that he most likely did a secret deal with MS-13 The other suspicion also is that the government is not correctly clocking the murders as well. They're just not they're just not reporting the murders potentially and the disappearances to artificially lower the fucking murder rate as well. And it's been successful in terms of propaganda. It's been successful. The remaining Salvadoran population that isn't imprisoned love it. They love him and they love this. That's how terrifying the MS-13 crime situation was to begin with. Okay? So you're just going to speculate? No, there's plenty of evidence as to why there is a secret side deal that he... wait, hold on. Hold on 1 second. I just got to do something here. Okay. Washington Post covered it as well. Bukele agreed to accept hundreds of suspected gang members living in the United States. In return, he wanted the U.S. to send him less than a dozen MS-13 gang members in U.S. custody. Why was he so intent on getting the MS-13 guys? Washington Post reports. Some Salvadoran analysts believe Bukele wants the gang leaders back so they won't testify about his government's involvement with them and potentially put him in legal trouble. If these returns of Salvadoran gang members continue, it takes away the possibility that the U.S. judicial system will open a case against Bukele for negotiations and agreements with terrorist groups, said Juan Martinez de Bucion, an anthropologist who has studied the gangs. Bukele has denied making deals with gangs. Such negotiations by his predecessors were highly unpopular domestically. A lot of ultra conservative people and even non-conservative people in El Salvador, like Bukele, they think he has been able to put a dent in the crime that MS-13 is engaged in, and to a certain degree, it has been successful. The problem here, however, is not that the incredible torture prison scheme that he has created is horrifying in and of itself. The issue also is that they're grabbing random people off the street with no due process. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, if you become the crime, if the government becomes the MS-13 gang, then yeah, technically there is no crime because it's a fucking police state. Operational autonomy. Just curious, what kind of deal would he make with MS-13? What does MS-13 get? Yeah, this is similar to what narco politics looks like in Mexico as well, as the chatter correctly points out. Operational autonomy and legal immunity in some cases as long as they stay within government boundaries. Don't fuck up the bag too much. Then why are his approval ratings so high? I don't know. Think about the United States of America. The United States of America is an even better analog to this because the rates of crime, specifically violent crime, are nowhere near as high as El Salvador. And yet the people were made to believe that there is like an undocumented migrant crime panic that has taken place in this country, and therefore are totally fine with these sorts of insane, unprecedented schemes that the Trump administration is engaging with right now. It's directly Hitlerian policy, and most people are either A, oblivious to it, or B, the ones who are aware of it are in support of it. So think about how that can happen. Try to analyze how that can happen in a country where there isn't the same level of fucking crime. And then think about what it would look like, how bloodthirsty normal Americans would be like if there was that level of crime as well. The United States Department of State also recognized these allegations in their El Salvador Human Rights Report in 2023, signaling arbitrary killings, cruel treatment by security forces, harsh and life-threatening prison conditions, and extensive gender-based violence as some of the barriers which have undermined President Bukele's security strategy. The Socorro Judicio Humanitario Foundation, which provides free legal advice to innocent Salvadorans criminalized by the state of emergency, has reported 315 deaths of incarcerated people since the establishment of the measure in 2022. The most prevalent causes of death signaled by the association are violence and lack of medical attention, although unknown causes of death have increased in 2024. These people only had the right to a hearing for the imposition of captivity measures, after which they died under the guardianship of the state. Amnesty International also explained that the widespread pattern of arbitrary arrest targets people from marginalized communities especially, which already suffer from crime and extreme poverty. The conditions that inmates experience within these prisons has also been heavily denounced by human rights organizations. As per the OAS, incarcerated individuals are stripped down to their underwear, placed in small cells where they sleep on the floor, and do not have access to clean water or food. So the torturous conditions are already fucking inhumane and unacceptable. Even when they are torturing MS-13 gang members, by the way, just so you understand, But the major problem here on top of that is that it's not all MS-13 gang members. It's not all rugged criminals. It's just what the state has decided is a fucking rugged criminal. Yeah, Salvadoran here who's been and is going again this year. Reason for Bukele's high popularity is because living conditions have improved. It's just that simple. So they see the improvement and think, well, it's working, and either don't care or see it as necessary. They've fallen for the propaganda. And for the record, we're talking about what's going on in El Salvador, but what's happening in El Salvador is no longer just about El Salvador, because we're sending Americans to this torture facility. Okay? And the reasons as to why we're doing that, the reasons as to why we're sending Americans or, legal permanent residents and potentially Americans down the line to this torture slave camp without due process, with no mechanisms to bring back these people, even if the Supreme Court demands that they bring back these people, is because we want to have an unaccountable torture slave labor colony that is not on U.S. soil, where we can just like ship enemies of the state to. And considering that the Trump administration is entertaining the notion of even drawing fucking penises on a Tesla as an act of terror, that can mean anyone and everyone. It's very weird that a lot of people refuse to recognize how this will fuck them down the line. It is shocking.
The border, when even in Democrat-run cities, they get a help from the work you're doing. So I'm really happy to be here, honored, and eager to help.
Well, we had a terrible thing happen. We had an administration that allowed people to come in freely into our country from not only South America, but from...
Tip, don't blow up a car. Yeah, okay, man. Blowing up a car, by the way, is a crime. It's just totally separate from a crime that can get you as an American citizen to be black bagged and shipped without due process to a fucking slave camp where you might die. Okay? What are you talking about? Like, what are we doing? What is this attitude? Just fucking kill everyone then, That's this is the logical conclusion that so many dumb mouth-breathing fascists come to, where it's just like, oh, you did a crime? Fucking die. I'm gonna kill you. Like, that's what you're saying. No reason. I've just decided you've done a crime and therefore I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna shoot you dead. And it's awesome that they're doing that. Like, you have no imagination on how this could one day harm you, okay?
all over the world, many from the Congo in Africa, Asia, all over the world, Europe, rough parts of Europe. And they came from prisons, and they came from mental institutions, and they came from gangs, and the gangs of Venezuela and other places.
I don't do crime.
And
dog. Normal daily activities that you engage in today could be considered a crime tomorrow. How is this difficult to understand? You are a fucking idiot. Also, it doesn't matter if you do a crime. If there's no due process, someone can just say you are doing a crime and black bag you anyway. That's the whole point of eroding due process. If there's no free speech, for example, and no due process, for example, these are two things that the Trump administration is eroding at this moment. Someone could just decide that they don't like the thought crime that you engaged in and black bag you. The only thing holding this entire structure together for you in your mind is the fantasy that it will never happen to you or a loved one. You don't actually need to do something. If there's no due process, someone could just claim that you did something and it's enough for you to get fucking sent to the slave labor camp.
Hundreds of thousands and even millions of them came. 21 million people altogether, but many of the people that came, just a tremendous percentage of them were criminals, in some cases violent criminals. We had 11,088 known murderers. Half of them murdered more than one person. This was allowed by a man who, what he did to our country is just unbelievable. So we're straightening it out. We're getting him out. But what they did and what that party did to our country, open borders, anybody could come in. As soon as I heard that, I said, every prison's going to be emptied out into our country. That's what happened. And we're straightening it out. And we just had numbers. We had the highest recruiting numbers in the history of our country going into police departments. And a year ago, we had the lowest numbers. You couldn't hire a
biggest
police.
change. Yeah.
Nobody's
From
ever
the
seen.
lowest to the highest.
And the military
said,
now,
okay.
Marines, the Army.
Okay, do you understand the point, though? Do you understand how this is dangerous for everyone, including yourself? No matter how dumb you are, even the dumbest person, I think, can be convinced that they are also under threat.
Air Force, Coast Guard. Every slot is, I mean, we have the best numbers we've ever had. We call it recruitment numbers. And we've never had anything like it. We had records on at every single level. But very important, the policemen. The policemen are joining forces now that we're having a hard time with policemen because we weren't protecting our police.
Yeah.
And we cherish our police. The police are great, and the firemen and everybody else. But we have the highest numbers that we've ever had, the most enthusiasm. We have great enthusiasm, and on trade and other things, we're doing great. We're taking in billions and billions of dollars. We made 2 weeks ago. I gave them a little bit of a pause because you have to show a little flexibility. But we go back to what we have to do. The markets have been very strong once they got used to it, but we were losing $2 billion a day. There's no company big like this. But this is the biggest deal ever made. Now we're making $3 billion a day. We're a great country, but we had stupid people running this country. And I can say that what they've done to us at the border should never and can never be forgotten. It's a sin, what they did. And you are helping us out. And we appreciate it. Thanks.
Actually, what you're doing with the border is remarkable. It has dropped, 95%? It's incredible.
As of this morning, 99%, 99.1% to be exact.
Why are those numbers not in the media?
Well, they get out with the fake news, like CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They only like putting out because I think they hate our country, actually.
Yeah,
but it's a shame. You're right. Isn't that a great question? Why doesn't the media? Why don't they put out numbers?
Yeah, 99%. I mean, it's crazy, right?
We're doing
It's
great.
a crazy turnaround.
Christy, could you maybe say a couple of words about the border? How we're doing?
It's just been absolutely phenomenal what a great leader can do. Clear direction. Our laws matter. We should only have people in our country that love us, and the Border Patrol and our ICE officers and law enforcement officers have done fantastic work. So we're proud of them. Now we just need to get the criminals and murderers and rapists and dangerous gang members and terrorist organizations out of our country. So, Mr. President Bukele, we thank you very much for your partnership. It has been wonderful for us to be able to have somewhere to send the worst of the worst and someone to partner with.
This entire conversation is happening on the heels of a person who demonstrably is not the worst of the worst, that the American federal government has actively admitted was not the worst of the worst. The El Salvador president refusing to order the return of the wrongly deported U.S. man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, okay, despite a unanimous Supreme Court decision, 9-0 Supreme Court decision, in direct violation of the Supreme Court's orders, that the Trump administration is utilizing the language surrounding the Supreme Court's unanimous decision to their advantage, while also simultaneously saying that they have no interest in facilitating this anyway. The president of El Salvador said in a meeting with Donald Trump at the White House on Monday that he would not order the return of a Maryland man who was deported in error to a Salvadoran mega prison. The question is preposterous, Nayib Bukele said in the Oval Office on Monday, where he was welcomed by Trump and spoke with the president and members of his cabinet. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I'm not going to do it. This person is not a terrorist. This person is not even in MS-13. This person is in the crosshairs of MS-13. The American judiciary, the American justice system found that this person was not only not MS-13, but also simultaneously in under threat from MS-13 if he were ever to be sent back to El Salvador. Okay? The government said, we cannot deport this person because you don't usually deport someone to another country in any case. But even if there was a situation where this person committed an act so vicious that they were deportable, they cannot be deported to El Salvador. Okay? He was in the process of going through his asylum application when he was black bagged and shipped away. And not only did all that happen, thank you. Not only did all this happen, the federal government also admitted. They admitted that it was wrong. They engaged in an administrative error and falsely deported this person to El Salvador. He added, I don't have the power to return him to the United States, and said he would not release the man into El Salvador either. I'm not very fond of releasing terrorists into the country. The comments came a day after the Trump administration claimed that it's not legally obligated to secure the return of Alberto Garcia, despite the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that the administration should facilitate bringing him back. Lawyers for the Justice Department argued in court filings on Sunday that asking El Salvador to return Alberto Garcia from a notorious mega prison should be considered foreign relations and was therefore outside of the scope of the courts. How is the ruling enforceable? No ruling is technically enforceable. The judiciary has the power to persuade. That's it. Nothing else. No, the judiciary, the Supreme Court does not have any mechanism of enforcement beyond what it says goes. If the federal government refuses to follow through on the Supreme Court's decision, you create a constitutional crisis. That means the entirety of the judiciary is done. It's over. There's no power anymore. Yeah, the judiciary requires a buy-in from the executive and society at large. They have no enforcement mechanism. This is a true constitutional crisis in every sense of the term. Yes. So what's happening right now with Nayib Bukele is the Trump administration basically saying, fuck you going to do about it?
We'd like to continue that partnership because it's been a powerful message of consequences. Mr. President, you wanted people to know that there was consequences if you break our laws and harm our people and endanger families. And this is a clear consequence for the worst of the worst, that we have somewhere to put them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we even had this gang member from Venezuela, one of the ones you sent, and we interviewed him just to get some information, etc. from them. And he said, oh, well, I got arrested 6 times, but they released me the 6 times, so I should be released again. And then we said, well, what's the last thing you do? And he said, well, I shot a cop in the leg, but I didn't kill him. I just shot him in the leg. And we're like, this guy was arrested 6 times here in the United States, 6 times. He was released 6 times, and in the he was released 5 times, and the last time he was sent to El Salvador, right? So he's not getting released. But the last time he shot a cop, actually, and he shot him in the leg. So these are, Like you said, yeah, there's something broken.
The liberal establishment, but they're not running things anymore in this country, and we're run by, and I don't say conservative, I don't say anything, we're run by people with great common sense.
Yeah, common sense.
Because it's
Yeah, that's not the point, is it? That's not who we're talking about right now, is it? You know? Even that guy should still go through the criminal justice system here in the United States of America. If he shot an American cop, he needs to go to American prison. That's my attitude on this issue, but like sending him to fucking El Salvador is insane. It doesn't make any sense. Having said that, however, the overwhelming majority of people that we've sent down to the CCOT facility so far are not even convicted of any sort of wrongdoing. They're not even accused of any sort of wrongdoing. The overwhelming majority have no criminal record whatsoever. They've been grabbed off the streets for erroneous claims with this like incredibly stupid, arbitrary point system that they've designed to be like, oh, you got a tattoo and you're brown? It's over. You're going to fucking CCOT. It's not even about deporting them at this point back to their nation of origin. It's just straight up permanently jailing them in a slave camp. It is fucking insane.
all common sense. It's not liberal conservative, it's common sense. Like, do you allow men to play in women's sports? Do you allow men to box your women and box? Because I know you have a lot of boxing.
That's violence.
That's abuse of a woman. It's abuse of a woman. But we have people that fight to the death because they think men should be able to play in women's sports.
Why should he get fed in American prisoners with taxpayer money? They're not even citizens. Oh my God, brother. Oh my God. Oh my God. How are we having this conversation over and over and over again every single time? Okay. The American criminal justice system has a higher standard until Donald Trump had a higher standard. Okay. The entire purpose is to make sure that justice is served. You understand? If an undocumented migrant shoots and kills, I doubt that. What do you mean you doubt that? Well, that's not an argument. Okay, never mind. You doubt it. Okay, well, I guess fucking owned. If you or one of your loved ones was wronged by an undocumented migrant or a documented migrant or a U.S. citizen, you want the American courts to at the very least go through the process and punish these people, convict them and charge them of the crimes and the wrongdoing that they engaged in. It's so fucking stupid. I hate that because Americans are so vindictive and so insane when it comes to crime and punishment that they straight up, no, I would want the death penalty. Dude, it's over, man. We are just a nation of bloodthirsty fascists, okay? Every fucking suburb has Adolf Hitler. Like 9-month subscriber, okay? 9-month subscriber, just straight up Adolf Hitler when it comes to crime and punishment. No, I would want the death penalty. Sick. When I hear stuff like this, I do think, you know, not the worst. Not the worst that we have Donald Trump. We kind of do fucking deserve it. Why should legacy Americans care? That's what they want, no? Wait, what? Don't forget, USA is scaring the immigrant working force. How about we stole the most brilliant peoples from the vassal states? What? What are you fucking saying? Did you get hit in the head over the course of the past 3 days? Legacy Americans? Are you LARPing as a Tucker Carlson fan? Like, what the fuck's happening here? İki. 2,5'ta yap. Yaparsan yerim. God damn it.
Sports, and some of those sports, it wouldn't matter much, but it still matters. But some of them are very dangerous for women.
Some years ago, like you said, a decade ago or so, women rights movements were pressuring so that we enacted specific laws to avoid men abusing women. And I think those laws were great because there were a lot of men abusing women. But now some of the same people are trying to backtrack on that and actually trying to make new laws allowing men to abuse women in sports. So actually, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
It's crazy. You know, they have weightlifting records, right?
Yeah.
A woman gets up and sways. She's incredible.
Oh my God. They're fucking talking about like trans athletes. I'm losing my fucking mind, dude. This is such. Ugh. This is what we deserve. This is what we deserve. We deserve the divine punishment that Donald Trump is dishing out to all Americans. We really do deserve it. We're so fucking stupid. We're such dumb hogs, dude. We're fucking championing this. We're like, this is great. This is awesome. Look at our brilliant president doing what's right, combating the real issues, you know? Trans athletes.
Each by 100 pounds. What are you going to do? A record that hadn't been broken in 18 years. You know, they put on an ounce, quarter of an ounce, eighth of an ounce for 18 years. Now they have a guy come up, ping. The whole thing is crazy. But they continue to fight. And I don't like talking about it because I want to save it for just before the next election. I said to my people, don't even talk about it because they'll change. And well, but I watched this morning. There was a congressman fighting to the death for men.
Documented New York reports that one of the Venezuelans deported to El Salvador was a 19-year-old with no criminal record, no tattoos, and who wasn't even a target of the ICE operation, but ended up sent there anyway. An ICE agent even said he's not the one when arrested. Wilmer only found out his son had been detained after receiving a phone call on March 15th from his nephew, Luis, who lives with them. That morning was their last time together. They had gone around the corner to do their laundry. Later that day, Wilmer said his son met with a friend to get some help with some errands at the American Red Cross. He learned this from Louise, who looked at the situation from inside the apartment. When his son was on his way back, just steps from his home, ICE agents stopped him. The officers grabbed him and two other boys right at the entrance to our building. One said, no, he's not the one, like they were looking for someone else. But the other said, take him anyway. That moment marked the beginning of Wilmer's search for answers. Answers he's still waiting for. This is 19-year-old Merville Gutierrez, who was grabbed off the street in New York City days before he was sent to El Salvador. His family insists he has no connection to Tren de Agua. He doesn't even have any tattoos. 19-year-old, take him anyway. This is Gestapo shit. This is stuff that we learned about in history books. Many of you in this community learned those lessons and are terrified. But some, I think, learned those lessons were like, why don't we do that here? It would be awesome to do that here. And that's why they're championing the doing of that here. Dude, come on, man. Come on. Like, you take a week off. In the midst of all of this, you're like, here's the poop sock. Like, you think this is a good opportunity for a poop sock chatter?
To play against women in sports. And you say to yourself, why? What are they doing, right? What are they doing? But your country's not too big in that.
No, of course not. We're big in protecting women.
Good. Yeah. That's right. It's a very important form of protection. Yeah.
And as you can see, most of my cabinet are women. So
that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's why you're
and
running.
they're not DEI hires or anything. They're just great at what they do. Right?
That's right. This is very impressive.
Yeah,
this is a first. We've had women, but we've never had three of them right here. That's
4 and 3 men.
Look at what we have. You guys feel a little bit mistreated? That's good. I like it. We've been advanced. I've been very advanced in that regard too. We have Pam, who's been so fantastic. Christy, and the most powerful woman they say
I
anywhere.
know, exactly.
She's rated.
They're all afraid of her.
Susie Wells, they say, oh, she's tough.
Yeah.
Most powerful woman in the world, according to magazines. What do I know?
Yes.
But I think she probably is.
Yeah, she probably is.
Yeah, she probably is.
Congratulations.
And you know, Stephen has done such a great job.
Thank you, sir.
We have great
He's
people.
very famous too.
But we love working with him. He really lets them have it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no games.
No. It's very good.
He knows. Do you have any questions, please?
President Trump?
No, let's not start
Mr.
with
President.
CNN because they're just so
Mr. President.
wrong. Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. You repeatedly mentioned last night that Russia's attack on Ukraine was a mistake. What is the exact mistake? And have you given Putin a deadline to actually move toward a ceasefire?
The mistake was letting the war happen. If Biden were competent, and if Zelensky were competent, and I don't know that he is. We had a rough session with this guy over here. He just kept asking for more and more. That war should have never been allowed to happen. That war, I went 4 years and Putin wouldn't even bring it up. And as soon as the election was rigged and I wasn't here, that war started. There was no way that war should have been allowed to happen. And Biden should have stopped it. And you take a look at Putin. I'm not saying anybody's an angel. But I will tell you, I went 4 years and it wasn't even a question. He would never, and I told him, don't do it. You're not going to do it. And it was the apple of his eye, but there was no way that he would have done it. All you had to do is lower oil prices. If you lowered oil prices, Biden kept the prices so high because he made it impossible to get it. If you lowered oil prices, you would have never had the war. But you wouldn't have had it with me anyway. That war would have never happened. And I think it's a great abuse. So now what do? You get a country where 25% of its land is gone, and the best locations, where millions of people are killed. You know, you haven't reported accurately the death. And this was Biden's war, and I'm trying to stop it. And I think we're going to do a good job. I hope we're going to do it. They lose 2,500 young people a week, think on average. Now, they're Russians and they're Ukrainians, but it's 2,000. We don't care. It's like whatever it is. They're not from your country. They're not from mine, but I want to stop it. 2,500, it's a killing field. It's like the Civil War. You take a look. I look at the satellite pictures. This should not be happening in our time. Of course, our time can be pretty violent, as we know. But that's a war that should have never been allowed to start. And Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
Have you spoken to President Zelensky, sir, about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles, you know. He's against, listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and then hope that people give you some missiles. If we didn't give them what we gave, remember, I gave them javelins. That's how they won their first big battle with the tanks that got stuck in the mud, and they took them out with javelins. They have an expression that Obama at the time, Obama gave them sheets and Trump gave them javelins. But there's something that should have never happened. It's a really shame. The towns are destroyed. Towns and cities are, you know, largely destroyed. They have the spires, you know, the beautiful spires that go up. They say they were the most beautiful in the world in Ukraine for whatever reason, but the most beautiful in the world, they're mostly laying on their side, shattered and broken. And most importantly, you have millions of people dead. Millions of people dead because of 3 people. I would say 3 people. Let's say Putin, number 1, but let's say Biden, who had no idea what the hell he was doing, number 2, and Zelensky. And all I can do is try and stop it. That's all I want to do. I want to stop the killing. And I think we're doing well in that regard. I think you'll have some very good proposals very soon.
Last question, sir. Have you attributed a motive, sir? Have you attributed a motive through the FBI investigation behind the attack on Governor Josh Shapiro over the weekend?
No, I haven't, but The attacker was not a fan of Trump, I understand, just from what I read and from what I've been told. The attacker basically wasn't a fan of anybody. It's probably just a whack job. And certainly a thing like that cannot be allowed to happen.
Is your good relation with President Bukele the best guarantee that this time you won't terminate the temporary
I have
protected
a
status?
great relationship with this man. I have the best relationship with him. We've known each other. I've known him since he was a very young man, as I said, very, very young, and I was impressed. I said, look how this guy is. In fact, you sort of look like a teenager. You look like a teenager. I said, what kind of a country is this? He grew up well in the last 5 years.
Do you support the extension for nationals of El Salvador under temporary
support
protected
him.
status?
Do you plan to ask him?
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate.
This is insane to me. Like, the government openly at this point recognizes that they did the wrong thing. And a part of recognizing that this was an administrative error means recognizing the lower court decision, the immigration court decision, to offer this person protected status against deportation from the United States of America, specifically to El Salvador. And they just simply lie over and over again. In the court proceedings that took place, they found out that this person was not a part of MS-13, that the confidential informant that lied to the police that he was MS-13 claimed that he was in New York. This person had never been in New York. On top of that, he was able to prove that if he were to be sent back to El Salvador, his life would be in danger. This is precisely the reason why they got the protections. It's crazy. Why won't reporters fact check them? There is nothing you can do. There's not really much you can do in terms of fact checking. I mean, he also said that Zelensky started the war again. You know what I mean? He's just like lying about so many different things. I mean, look, here it is. The war between Russia and Ukraine is Biden's war, not mine. I just got here and for 4 years during my term had no problem in preventing it from happening. President Putin and everyone else respected your president. I had nothing to do with this war, but I'm working diligently to get the death and destruction to stop. If the 2020 presidential election was not rigged, and it was, in so many ways, that horrible war would have never happened. President Zelensky, crooked Joe Biden did an absolutely horrible job in allowing this travesty to begin. There were so many ways of preventing it from ever starting, but that is the past. Now we have to stop. Now we have to get it to stop and fast. So sad. Everything he says is incorrect. Everything. Everything he says is a lie. On every issue. Whether it be tariffs, saying that there's going to be exemptions, but no exemptions, saying that like, Xi Jinping's going to call me any day now, and then being like, why won't Xi Jinping call me? Everything. He's just breaking everything. And it's not like things were great already. They weren't. They certainly weren't. Kaya, place.
Appellate immigration court ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it. Meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Usted estaría dispuesto
Stephen
a-
Miller, wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant. because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you,
your indigestion is wild. Tums, Xantex, Prilosec. I know this is annoying, but I see you struggle with it every day. You're eating tons of protein for the gains. You got to help out your digestion a bit. Please don't yell at me. What? Dude, what the fuck are you talking about? I don't have any indigestion. What the actual fuck are you talking about? You think I use any of those things? I don't know if I should permanently ban this person or give him a week off. Don't yell at me. Dude, be fucking normal, dude. What the fuck is that? Jesus Christ, dude. I think he thinks that I'm, yeah, the Zins I'm popping are maybe Tums or something. That's what he thinks. Oh, fuck.
he's a citizen of El Salvador. So it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States.
That's not true. Every part of what he stated here is wrong. And I know Charlie Kirk posted this as like, oh, he really popped off on this one. He just fucking, I guess that it's cool. You can just lie about all this shit.
As a starting point. As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13.
That's not true. First of all, that is straight up not true.
When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue...
Oh, that's kidnapping. That's actually the kidnapping. It's not what we did. What we did was a legal enforcement that we recognized wasn't legal now. But returning that person would be the real kidnapping. Okay, kidnap him and return him then. Who are they talking about? Is this guy's name public? Yes. His name is Kilmar Abrego Garcia. His name is Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He's a Maryland resident with a wife and a child. He was a member of a union. It's so insane that they're acting like this is the sovereignty of El Salvador issue. Like, what is this?
She was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0.
This is also an inversion of the truth once again. Here's Ed Whelan's statement on the matter. Outrageous misinterpretation of the Supreme Court ruling. The unanimous court ruled that the district court order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. Yes, the court also stated that the intended scope of the term effectuate in the district court's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. And it told the district court to clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. But one, due regard doesn't mean that the district court couldn't have any teeth to effectuate. And two, in any event, the district court dropped effectuate from its revised order, so this is all irrelevant. Duty to facilitate continues. As I've said, the Trump administration will probably be able to get away with its bad faith defiance of the court on this matter, but it's appalling that it thinks that anyone is stupid enough to believe that it is actually complying with the court's ruling. Or rather, reversing the court's actual ruling by saying, no, the Supreme Court actually is on our side. The unanimous decision is there to defend our our immigration enforcement action. It's not. It's the exact opposite. If it was in defense of your immigration enforcement action, you wouldn't be playing legalese semantics with the decision. You would just say, the decision is clear as day. The Supreme Court thinks what we did was totally permissible. Instead, you have to hyper-focus on what facilitate versus effectuate means. Facilitation doesn't mean that this is an enforceable action, for example. Like, that's what it... That's the entire point of contention here. If the unanimous Supreme Court decision was stating that the federal government has the power to do this, they would not have said the federal government has to facilitate a return of the Maryland resident immediately.
Unanimously.
What do they gain by keeping him there? A million different reasons. One, they stand firm and test out the boundaries of the Supreme Court. Two, they basically violate Supreme Court orders without triggering a constitutional crisis, which gives them more opportunity to do this down the line. Three, if he were to be returned, he talks about the horrifying nature of the prisons. You got, 60 Minutes doing a... You set a precedent, you set a scary precedent for the Trump administration that, like, some of the people that they are interested in unjustifiably sending over to the slave colony can be returned to U.S. soil. And on top of that, they talk about the horrifying conditions there and the horrifying mistreatment that they experience as a Maryland resident. All of a sudden, it destroys the secretive nature of these operations. Because you don't want any microscope on this, okay? You don't want any sort of attention being brought forward here. They're trying to basically start a process in which they have enough utilizing the pre-existing legal restrictions to their advantage to slowly but surely erode the last mechanisms of safety that would stop the administration from doing stuff like this, whether it be due process, whether it be, violating court orders. So if they were to actually return this person and he comes back, it's horrible propaganda against the administration. It ruins everything that they're trying to do. It makes them look weak. It sets a precedent that they have to abide by court. They have to abide by the authority of the courts. Why did they even admit they made a mistake? Also, was he really the only one? No, of course not. He's not the only person that was sent there under false pretense. He's the only one that a immigration attorney of the state accidentally admitted to the administrative error on. That attorney has also literally been fired, I think. I think they fired him, right? Like, Pam Bondi literally said, you're done, you're out. Why did you ever admit to this? That's the problem. Virtually all of the people, with the exception of like a handful, are actually sent to El Salvador under similar conditions. This one is the most egregious because there was a directive from the court to not send him to El Salvador. It's the tip of the iceberg.
Stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
a
Court's
to get him
asking
back?
to.
And
Is that-
what was the ruling
Facilitate
in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling.
That's not what happened. It's the exact opposite of what happened. That is
saying
incredible.
that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo
President
liberaría,
Bukele, what is
Presidente
your, can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm suppose you're not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's
I mean,
always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean, the
But
question.
again, everyone is just saying he's a terrorist. He's not. It's insane.
It's preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago, and they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible.
Yeah, why won't you cover the news in a way where it suits my propaganda purposes is a crazy way to redirect the question. It's not even redirection. It's just like, why don't you just feed my ego? That's crazy. Like, doing this while he's openly defying a unanimous decision from the Supreme Court and simultaneously, without evidence, with only evidence to prove the opposite, that's readily available, claiming that the guy that they're defying the Supreme Court order for is actually a terrorist. And also admitting that they want to do this to American citizens as well. How the fuck does nobody understand how terrifying this is? It's not like they're sheltering you from the truth. They're saying this is the goal. This is the purpose. This is what they are moving in the direction of. And it seems like a lot of Americans are oblivious, and the ones who are not oblivious are actively fantasizing about this. I don't even know how you combat this. I truly don't know how you... Like, I don't know what to do in this situation. This is just unprecedented territory. Yeah, meanwhile, the army is arriving at the southern border as they're gearing up potentially for an invasion. I don't even know what the fuck they're going to do there. This is openly defiant of the Supreme Court, which specifically upheld in a unanimous decision an order that requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. Here it is. The order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. They just wrote it. Clear as day. Trump administration claims SCOTUS ruling doesn't compel it to actually seek illegally deported man's release from prison, only to let him into the U.S. if he manages to get out.
And I just asked the president, you know, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it. So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous.
The only person that I've seen that is like actively doing something about this is Van Hollen. Okay. Respect to Chris Van Hollen on this. Requests meeting with President Bukele to discuss the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Announces intent to travel to El Salvador this week if Abrego Garcia is not returned. U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland has requested a meeting with Nayib Bukele when he's in the United States. And if he is not returned by the end of this week, he's going to go down to El Salvador. This is actually 100% something I am in support of 1,000,000%. As an American senator, you have a lot of opportunity to bring attention to issues, and putting yourself directly in the crosshairs is a fantastic way to do that. And I'm glad that there is at least someone out there that's willing to do this. Imagine if Booker did this for Mahmoud. Yeah, he would never in a million years do that because Cory Booker is Israel's guy. Okay, that's the reality. But yes, that is the expectation from our senators. This is the right thing to do. This is the smart thing to do. I'm very happy that there's at least someone demonstrating the courage necessary. Partially because when you're an American senator and a country like El Salvador, let's say, denies you entry into the country, you're basically taking an action not just against an American senator, a member of the Democratic Party, but you're taking action against America. And I think that will have a profound impact on the way that this is treated in the media and the way that Americans will respond to this. It will create a situation where Americans who run off the notion that we're the number one country on the planet, with our citizens having extra rights in comparison to everybody else, will get mad at the Trump administration if the Trump administration doesn't turn around and defend an American senator. But can he actually get him out? Trump won't approve of this and won't care if they don't let him in? No, I'm saying that, let's say Senator Chris Van Hollen goes to, but this is a 2080 issue. Most Americans support that. No, they do not. No, they do not. You are crazy for just simply repeating something that Stephen Miller is saying. Americans don't know what the fuck they're in support of until it becomes an issue that is in front of their eyes. That's why I place a lot of importance on senators like this taking action against this, to put this in the forefront of American consciousness. Do you not understand? How many times do we have to experience this until people recognize that something being considered a 2080 issue doesn't necessarily mean it will stay a 2080 issue? This is at the heart of my anger towards the Democratic Party in terms of immigration. No counter messaging on immigration has created an environment, a media landscape that is heavily dominated by right-wing lies on the issue. This is precisely the reason why Americans are either, like I said, oblivious to the actions that the Trump administration is taking, or at the very least entertain it or enjoy it and support it, the ones who are knowledgeable on the actions being taken to begin with. But that is only because they do not comprehend the full scope of what is happening. Yeah. Also ironic to say this exactly. These dumbass shadows don't realize that 2 years ago, Israel had 80% of American support. Yeah. Now it's become a 2080 issue in the other direction, at least in the Democratic Party. Now, this doesn't stop the Democrats from refusing to recognize the popular support towards Palestinian emancipation that is in their base, because, you know, their careers rely on them refusing to recognize it. But these kinds of actions, unironically, when paired up with the reality that every American can experience, every American can see, will quickly change the attitude. Look no further than the fucking tariffs. Donald Trump ran on tariffs. He could say he won on tariffs. Look at the Americans' attitude towards tariffs now. Because once implemented, everybody realized, oh my God, this is going to have a horrible impact on both the stock market and also the price of goods. Please drop this fucking, this is a 2080 issue nonsense. We are a particularly stupid country, okay? We're a particularly dumb and stubborn nation.
Not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart. When they heard that this very low IQ president, and by the way, I took my cognitive exam as part of my physical exam, and I got the highest mark, and one of the doctors said, "Sir, I've never seen anybody get that kind of, that was the highest mark." I hope you're happy with that, although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive, but I did do my physical and it was released. I hope you're all happy with it. I notice there's no question, so probably you are. But the cognitive, they said to me, "Sir, would you like to take a cognitive test?" I said, "Did Biden take one?" "No." "Did anybody take one?" "No, not too many people took them." I said, what about Obama? Did he take one?" "No, he didn't take one either." I said, "Let me be the only one to take one." But I've actually taken them 3 times already. I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take. But we had a great physical exam, so I know you're going to ask that. And the doctors, who are total professionals, Walter Reed Medical Center, they're great people. And I visited a soldier that was badly wounded, incredible soldier, lost his leg, and spent a lot of time with him. I mean, great with his mother, and it was really a very great thing. They do a phenomenal job. I just want to say, Walter Reed, I was there for, 5-6 hours. You were there with me. But I took a full physical, and he came out perfecto, so that's good. That means you've got me for a little longer.
Would the U.S. be willing to pay for those facilities to be opened if new ones were going to be built?
I'd do something. We'd help them out. Yeah, we help them. They're great facilities, very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam. I don't know what the laws are. We always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but you'll have to be looking at the laws on that, Steve, okay?
How essential is it for you guys to be locking up these prisoners? And do you think more presidents should follow suit like you guys as far as taking a hard stance on crime here in the United States?
Well, I do. I think everybody has to. I mean, the president said it better than anybody. He said, you know, you have liberty and you have to have liberty, but to have liberty, not everybody is going to be good. And, you know, some are bad because they're sick. They're mentally deranged. They're bad. And you have to take them. If you're going to have a country, you're going to have to take those people out. And we've been doing that. But this was like an unforced error, they would call it, where we had people that may hate our country, or maybe they're just stupid people. I think they're probably stupid people more so. A lot of people said they did it for the vote. But I did better with Hispanic people than they did, because they always use Hispanic. I did better. You people love me. I saw my poll numbers in your country up through the roof, right? 91%. Some people think they do it for the vote. But they don't have to do it for the vote. They cheat. You know?
How dangerous the U.S. for tourists right now? Incredibly dangerous. Straight up. I never thought I would say this. Insanely dangerous. Because they don't just deny you entry into the country, okay, which they have already. That's a saving grace. You getting denial of entry into the country saves your ass. Because we don't just deport anymore. We just send you to a slave labor prison and then actively say, we can't bring you back. Sorry, sucks to suck. Actually, do not come. If you think you have legal protections, let me tell you right now, you do not have any legal protections. And American citizens themselves will no longer have legal protections either. This has also obviously led to travel falling off of a fucking cliff here. The U.S. Is one of the world's top travel spots, pulling in over 72 million visitors last year, generating 1.3 trillion. But lately, travel from Europe and Canada is down up to 35% thanks to Trump's talk and scary border stories. Trump is bankrupting the U.S. It's down 30% for most countries. 20 to 30%. It's okay, V. Thank you for the 10 gifted subs. They're also showed up seizing mobile devices of people they suspect just to look at contacts. They're doing this to American citizens too, by the way. They did this to an immigration lawyer. They literally sat him down and tried to go through his phone. And they said they knew he was an immigration lawyer. There's also the other side of the story where they're incredibly incompetent. They sent out a mass blast of emails to American citizens telling them to self-deport in 10 days. That also happened this past week. And it was so stupid that I initially thought it can't be real. There was an immigration attorney in the United States of America that revealed that her wife, who's also an American citizen, got a immigration enforcement email demanding that they self-deport in 7 days, saying that their saying that their legal permanent residency had been revoked, this person was not a legal permanent resident. They were a citizen. So not only is it horrifying, it's also incredibly stupid and incredibly incompetent as well. Yeah. How is this country going to host a World Cup is a real question. This is supposed to happen in a couple months. A well-respected MMA coach who always posts training tips and is based out of Australia says he arrived in the U.S. for an already scheduled seminar, but was detained at the border, thrown in a federal prison, and ultimately deported. Like, why the fuck would you come here, dude? Oh, next year. Sorry, not this year. Next year. I don't even know how we get to next year at this stage. At this point, I don't know what next year looks like even. World Cup next year. Club World Cup is this summer. Yeah, there's a 2025 Cup in June and July, right? Are you afraid of being targeted by the Trump administration? Chatters, I am an American citizen. I was born here, okay? By the time the Trump administration decides to take illegal actions and enforcement against someone like myself, it's already over. I'm definitely on the list. Like, someone like myself would certainly be on the list with someone of my background, but I'm on the lower side of said list. Understand that many of you will have already been packed up by the time they fucking get to someone like myself. I hope that we will at some point dial this back dramatically.
You know, they're professional cheaters. That's about the only thing they do well. So we just have had a great relationship, and it's become bigger because of a strange thing that happened. You know, I came back. We had no war in Ukraine. We had no war we had no October 7th Middle East problem. We had nothing. We had no inflation. We didn't have the Afghanistan, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, the Afghanistan, not withdrawing, because I would have been out, you know, I had it all set to bring people out with dignity and pride. That was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan.
God damn it. What the hell? Little F there. Minor F. Minor F, but we're back. We're back. No, they didn't get me. The CIA heart attack gun did not get me. Everybody calm down. It wasn't that significant of a drop. God damn, everybody loses their freaking minds anytime there's a little bit of a F. There was a blip, okay? Calm down.
Middle East, we didn't have any of that. You wouldn't have had the war with Russia, Ukraine. You wouldn't have had the Middle East problem because Iran was broke. They had no money because we had secondary sanctions on and lots of other sanctions. And now every single thing, got a problem with Iran, but I'll solve that problem. That's almost an easy one. We got to solve a war that should have never started, Ukraine and Russia, and we'll get that solved. And we have to solve problems, and we already solved inflation. You know, if you look at the numbers are incredible, actually. The stock market's up, and we're not letting other countries take advantage of this country like they have for the last 40 years. So thank you very much. You have a question, please?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you so much. You scored another major investment win this morning when NVIDIA pledged to build its AI supercomputer, the first time ever, right here in the United States.
Thank you. That's a question I like. That's true.
What is your reaction to this announcement, sir, and how will this positively benefit Americans across the entire country?
Well, it's one of the biggest announcements you'll ever hear, because NVIDIA, as you know, controls that almost the entire sector, which is one of the most important sectors in the world, between chips and semiconductors and everything else. And they're the biggest. And the other biggest we already have coming in and spending $300 billion, as you know. They announced 2 weeks ago. But NVIDIA is so highly respected. And this was an announcement that a lot of people, I knew it was going to happen, but not to the extent that it happened. It's big. And the reason they did it is because of the election on November 5th and because of a thing called tariffs. As I said, the most beautiful word in the dictionary. After love, God, relationship. The press actually hit me and said, tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. What about family, love, God? I got hit even on that. You understand? I said, okay. So now I say it's my 5th most favorite word because they get you on anything. But no, that NVIDIA, it's one of the great companies of the world. Modern, super modern companies, controls segments that nobody, you know, sort of controls the world in a sense, and they're coming in here in the biggest way with hundreds of billions of dollars. Not like millions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and I'm honored by it. And I want to thank Jensen and all of the people that we deal with. They're great people, they're brilliant people. And without tariffs, they wouldn't be doing it. Okay? Thank you very much.
Are you considering additional sanctions against Russia after their latest attack? And do you have an update on the rate and when you might announce semiconductor
Well, I already have
tariffs?
sanctions on Russia. I put them there. If you remember, Nord Stream 2, that's the big pipeline that goes through Europe. I stopped it. That's Russia's pipeline, the largest pipeline, I think, in the world. Goes to Germany. And I stopped it. And when Biden came in...
Well, Biden blew it up, so... I mean, who took more significant action, one must ask.
He approved it. And then they say, oh, I'm friendly with Russia. No. Putin said, you know, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you when you're my enemy. I stopped the biggest economic job they ever had. I stopped it cold, right? It was dead. You know that, right? And Biden came in and he immediately approved it. What was that all about? And it's a pipeline that takes care of a lot of the needs. Now, you know, it was a very controversial thing, but I stopped it and Biden approved it. Question?
On tariffs,
no, not you. Not
update today on potential semiconductor tariffs and potentially pharmaceuticals. Semiconductor tariffs and potentially pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals we're going to do. We don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, it's very simple. It's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come. And yeah, we're going to be doing that. That's going to be like we have on cars. We have, as you know, a 25% tariff on cars. We have a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. And that's what that category fits right now.
Do you have a percentage in mind and a timeline?
I have a timeline, yeah, not too distant future. And we're doing it because we want to make our own drugs. We're doing it because we want to make our own steel and aluminum, lumber, other things. And they're all coming in. We have record numbers, $7 trillion. Since I announced, like a month and a half ago, since I came in, we have over $7 trillion being invested in the country. We didn't have $1 trillion. We didn't have $500 billion for some of these guys. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. So we have the largest investment that we've ever heard of, and we're only 2 months in.
Is any of this true? No, of course it's not true. Of course, none of this is true. What has Donald Trump ever said that's correct? I mean, what he's going to do when he says he's going to do something, I guess there is some veracity to that, but that's not like if he says he's going to engage in ridiculous deportations of people, or when he says that he's going to do this to American citizens as well, yeah, treat that as the truth. He will try. But as far as like things that he claims have happened, everything is a lie. In terms of the economy, tariffs, its impact, everything that he's saying is a fucking lie, straight up.
And that'll continue at levels that you've never seen before. That's what's going to happen. And even the stock market.
When he says this is going to fix the trade deficit, that's a lie. When he says he's going to bring manufacturing to the United States with this action, that's a lie. It is physically impossible for him to do so. Okay? It is not possible for him to do this without severe government-funded initiatives to build a robust base of manufacturing in the United States of America. He will not be able to do any of these things.
Market's up today. It's we also had, we a lot of people didn't say it the way it was. We had the largest gain in the stock market in history on every single category.
Yeah, after the largest cataclysmic dip of the stock market, there was a brief moment of recovery, and yet it's still incredibly unstable due to his administration going back and forth. That's the other side of this. The instability caused by Donald Trump going back and forth on the tariffs and exemptions, and then going back on the exemptions. That in and of itself does not exactly spell order, instability, and therefore causes people to go, yeah, I will invest trillions of dollars into this magical American manufacturing. Why should it?
That was a nice game because we were getting a little hit because people didn't understand the power of our country economically if you use it right. Do you have something to say on that, JD?
Yes, sir. I mean, look, for 40 years we have lost manufacturing capacity. Workers have seen their wages stagnate, and some of the most critical things that we need, from the pharmaceuticals, the drugs that we give to our children, the antibiotics that we give to our kids, to the weapons that we actually need to fight a war, if God forbid we had to fight a war, we don't make enough of that stuff. And so President Trump ran explicitly on changing that. Yes, as the president mentioned, it caused a little bit of disruption in the market, but I actually think over the long term, workers are going to benefit, stocks are going to go up, American businesses are going to benefit as we reinvest and reindustrialize our country.
And the auto workers and the Teamsters and all of the unions, not traditionally Republican, but I'm winning those unions by, we're up 40, 50 points on the Democrats. They're losing everything. They're losing everything because they just have policies that are not believable. They fight for policies that are 5% popular.
He embarrassed himself a couple minutes ago. Oh, he broke the trophy, right? I saw that. The CFP National Championship trophy falls apart as JD Vance tries to hold it afloat. Fucking idiot. The trophy was made in America by UAP Polic Talix in New York. The award is two separate pieces, the trophy and the base, with the idea being that the trophy is what's held aloft, not the base.
And nobody knows who the 5% are. I mean, nobody can find the 5%. But if you go back to Ohio, and by the way, we have the great championship team from Ohio coming in today, right?
Very big day.
And that's going to be a little bit later. And that'll be, if you want to stick around, I'll introduce you to some nice people. You'll see some very large people, right? You'll see some people that even you have not seen people like this. These are big, these are 6'7", 380 pounds with no fat. Okay, that's pretty good, right? But the team, the national championship team, is being honored today at the White House, so that'll be exciting. If you're around, you want to stay around, I'll have you up there. You can tell them all about your prison, how you have to behave. Okay. Who else?
Exemptions on electronics.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, you said yesterday that you're making a decision on Iran very quickly. What do you mean by that? Is that a decision to strike
They have to
Iran?
solve their problem very quickly. Iran wants to deal with us, but they don't know how. They really don't know how. We had a meeting with them on Saturday. We have another meeting scheduled next Saturday. I said, that's a long time. You know, that's a long time. So I think they might be tapping us along. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. He can't have a nuclear weapon. Nobody can have. We can't have anybody having nuclear weapons. You know, we can't have nuclear weapons. And I think they're tapping us along because we're so used to dealing with stupid people in this country. And I had Iran perfect. You had no attacks. You would have never had October 7th in Israel. It was broke. It was stone cold broke when I was president. And I don't want to do it. I want them to be a rich, great nation. The only thing is, one thing, simple. It's really simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And they got to go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us. I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people, and they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Does that include a potential strike on Iranian nuclear facilities?
Of course it does.
And just a follow-up question, a clarification. You mentioned that you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens, fully naturalized Americans?
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What do you think? There's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too, and I'm all for it because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons, and then we have the private prisons, and some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't. But he does a great.
This is him once again reconfirming that he's interested in sending American citizens to El Salvador in an unprecedented fashion as well.
Great job with that. We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people. Every bit as bad as the ones coming in. And I made the statement when I heard about this a long time ago now, 4 years ago. When I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. And that's what happened. Jails. The jails of the Congo were emptied out. The jails of Venezuela were emptied out. And you know what happened?
He used to say the jails in El Salvador were emptied out too. I thought it was really strange when he would shit on Nayib Bukele. I remember him doing that, claiming that Bukele was doing this as well. He said it at CPAC too, which was odd because like Bukele had attended a bunch of the CPAC conferences and was getting a lot of love from American Republicans. Seemingly that has changed.
I went way down. But
I
now,
feel like he's lying. Yeah, of course he's lying. What are you talking about? These people are not opening up their prisons and dumping their prisoners into the United States. You can't do that. That's not a thing that. It's not even a thing you can facilitate.
Venezuela has other problems. You know what the problem is?
The irony, of course, is that the only time a country that is capable of doing that has done that is the United States of America. That's how MS-13 was created. MS-13 was a gang that was created in the American prison system, and we sent all of the MS-13 prisoners to El Salvador. We flew them in on flights, commercial jets, without telling the Salvadoran government that these were MS-13 gang members, and we just simply deported them without informing El Salvador that these were MS-13 gang members. So when Donald Trump says like this is something that other countries are doing, he probably doesn't even know that we did that. He has no idea that we literally did that to El Salvador. But that is how MS-13 became such a powerful organization. That's how it happened.
I have no money because I shut off their oil, and we put secondary tariffs because they're not doing what's right over there. They know what to do. We spoke to them. I spoke to them. They know what to do, but they have no money. Venezuela has no money, but Iran had no money, and Iran behaved so beautifully. And then Biden took all those secondary tariffs on tariffs on. I told China, you can't buy oil. If you buy oil from Iran, China, I told it to President Xi, then we no longer want you to do business with the United States of America. And those ships disappeared from that harbor so quickly. China. Get along great with China.
Are the talks with Iran productive? Do you want to continue that? The talks with Iran, do you believe those are productive? Do you want to continue that?
I think Iran could be a great country as long as it doesn't have nuclear weapons. If they have nuclear weapons, they'll never get a chance to be a great country. They will never get a chance. It won't even come close.
Sir, on tariffs?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yesterday you mentioned short-lived product exemptions. Which specific products are you considering, and how long is short-lived? Weeks, months?
I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies where they're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places, and they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here, but they need a little bit of time. So I'm talking about things like that.
What about any Apple products, other cell phones?
Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. And you have to be. You just can't have a wall and you'll only go. No, sometimes you have to go around it, under it, or above it. There'll be maybe things coming up. I speak to Tim Cook. I helped Tim Cook recently, and that whole business. I don't want to hurt anybody, but the end result is we're going to get to the position of greatness for our country. We're the greatest economic power in the world if we're smart. If we're not smart, we're going to hurt our country very badly. We lost with China over the Biden years trillions of dollars on trade. Trillions of dollars. And he let them fleece us. And we can't do that anymore. And you know what? I don't blame China at all. I don't blame President Xi. I like him. He likes me. I mean, who knows? Who the hell cares?
Do you have any updates on?
Oh my God, he's literally like a scorned lover, dude. His behavior with Xi now has dramatically shifted. He went from he's so scared, he'll call me, we have good relationships. We have a good relationship to please call me Xi. Xi, it would be really nice if you call me, to like, who the hell cares about him? I don't care about him. I no longer care about him. I don't love him no more. This keeps going. This keeps going, and Trump is going to be begging for Xi to call by next week. Like, come on, please. What are you doing, Xi? You're ruining the global economy. Why would you do this? Why would you do this? Why would you let me do this, Xi?
You know what? What?
Do you have any updates for the talks with China?
No, let me just tell you this. I don't blame China. I don't blame Vietnam. I see their meeting today. Is that wonderful? That's a lovely meeting. They're meeting, like trying to figure out how do we screw the United States of America. Don't forget, the European Union was formed to do just that. The European Union was formed to hurt the United States and on trade. And they get us on NATO because they don't pay their bills. But now, since I got involved, they have been paying their bills. I took in over $600 billion for NATO. Nobody took in anything. I mean, they were all delinquent. They had 8 nations out of 28 paid their bills. The rest of them were way delinquent.
Don't do
and
NATO.
I said, if you don't
Don't
pay your
do
bills, we're
NATO
not
to
going to
me,
protect you
Xi.
anymore.
Don't do
And the money
EU to
poured
me.
in over 600. The Secretary General last week made that statement. He said, I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't get anybody to pay because the United States was footing the bill for NATO. Well, we got hurt there, and we got hurt on trade, likewise, European Union. And they've got to come to the table, and they're trying to. They're trying to. But the European Union has taken terrible advantage. They don't take our food products. They don't take our cars. We have millions of their cars, BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, many others. They come in by the millions. They don't take. There are no Chevrolets in Munich, I can tell you that. I said to Angela Merkel when she was there, as she was letting millions of people infiltrate Germany, which was not so good from, we would call them illegal immigrants, but she made them legal. But I said to her, and I get along with her very well, I said, how many Chevrolets do we have?
So they're not illegal immigrants, then. I like that we have changed our own designation for what we consider to be illegal versus legal immigrants, and we want to do that for other countries too. Like we gotta control what they do in terms of their own domestic policies, in terms of their own fucking asylum processes too. It's just like we gotta dominate the whole world. You need to change your food regulation so you can get our meat, our big beautiful meat, our big beautiful beef. You must get our poultry. You must get our chickens in our factories. You must get our cars. Change the roads. Widen those roads. Make it into a parking lot. I will not stop until Barcelona is one big parking lot.
Have in Munich or Frankfurt.
You remembered right on Trump
Venezuela.
shitting on Bukele? Yeah, of course.
Crime is down 72%. You know, Caracas, Venezuela was a very, very dangerous place. And now, because of the great job they've done in removing their criminals into the United States, next year we're going to have our Michigan rally in Caracas, Venezuela, because it's nice and safe. Okay? Does that sound like a good idea to you? Because we want safety. Now, the press is going to write that. They're going to say, Donald Trump proposed next year's Michigan rally in Caracas, Venezuela. They'll say, isn't that horrible? Isn't that unpatriotic? You understand. This is what I have to go with. I'm only kidding, press. I'm only kidding. Although maybe it's not a bad idea. So El Salvador is an interesting one because I know the president. He's a young guy, and he's been getting this great press that his crime rate's way down. And they're training their criminals. Well, you don't train criminals, okay? You know, maybe every once in a while you get lucky, but you don't. So in El Salvador, murders are down 70%. He's saying, yes, we're teaching. He's different. Most of them just say, well, the United States is stupid, so we're dumping all our criminals there. He does it differently, smart. He goes, we're working with our people that are causing problems and crime. And he's not working with them. He's dumping them in the United States. And their crime rate, their murder rate is down 72%.
See?
%73% and going up. And I don't blame him because of...
Yeah. He used to falsely claim that Nayib Bukele was also dumping prisoners into the United States of America. Anyway.
Why? None, Donald. None. I said, you're right. And yet we take in millions and millions of cars. No, those days are over. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
So that was the convo. Here is a Wall Street Journal report on why the El Salvador President Bukele is so popular with Trump's inner circle and also so popular with like conservatives. Implemented martial law. And it's also more than 1%. So it was almost 2% of the population. Think about how insane that is, bro.
Civil liberties, including due process.
Yeah, no due process. It's crazy. And our right-wing politicians are looking at that and going, this is fantastic. This is an incredible idea. This is amazing. We need to do that. And they are doing that. Woo! This is like the Xi Jinping but for fascists, okay? What social democrats and democratic socialists and socialists alike look towards, like the governance of Xi Jinping in China, for fascists, like they're like, oh, Nayib Bukele is the method. He is the man for the moment. No wonder they fucking love collaborating with this guy. This shit is totally fake, by the way. Like, all this God stuff is... He's just... I mean, I guess he's similar to Donald Trump in that vein. Trump being like, I love the Bible. I love the Bible. It's my favorite. I love all the verses.
Most influential think tank in the world.
A big turning point was...
So for you to the right of social democrats, there's only fascists? What the fuck, dude? Wait, first of all, I think social democrats can also entertain social fascism. Okay, that's number one. But number two, I didn't even fucking say that. I don't know where you derived this information from. Everyone has a little bit of a fascist dog in them, I think. Hitler particles inside of their soul, waiting to unlock. Literally the El Salvadorian president. You are the Salvadorian president. What do you mean globalism? Dude, one of the funniest things that I used to point to is when Nayib Bukele would say we're killing globalism, or when Viktor Orban does the same. They do the same thing. They go to CPAC and they talk about how, like, we're killing globalism in America. You're just global at that point. What the fuck do you mean? The fuck? Second time this happened. Weird. Oh, I don't know what it is. It's just like randomly keeps happening. Strange stuff. When I say I don't know what's happening, this is not an invitation for you to speculate. Oh my God. I will never be able to stop people from speculating regardless, though. Yeah, check your PC temps. You're getting DDoSed. Change your passwords. It's over. They're testing the CIA kill switch. All of that is real. That is what the Supreme Court is. I'm going to talk about the situation in Vermont in a second as well. I will cover that as well. Mohsen Modawi, a Palestinian-born green card holder and student at Columbia University, was apprehended at a regular immigration court date that he attended. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a second.
Is the president going to ask for him to be returned to the United States or not? Like, yes or no?
So first of all, it's not a question for me to answer, but I think that the assumption that underlies the question is what needs to be corrected, which is that there was no mistake that was made. He was sent. Like, so what? Let me ask you. So what do you think would happen to him if he came back to this country? As your understanding of immigration laws, what do you think would happen?
But I'm just asking.
Oh, it wasn't any court date. He was about to get citizenship. Jesus Christ.
You're asking a lot of questions. You're all asking a lot of questions about this, and you all seem to care about it a lot. So let's see if any of you have researched anything about this issue at all. Can anyone here tell me what would happen to the illegal alien from El Salvador if he came back to the United States? Does anyone here know? Does anyone want to guess? Any of you?
He could be with his family.
Does any of you know the answer to the question? Legally, what would happen if he came back here? Does any of you know? Any of you?
He goes through the court system once again to get his asylum application processed. Yeah, and he lives with his family and continues to work at the union job that he had. You know, he's not illegal. He's quite literally not illegal. This distinction, the saddest state of affairs here is always that these guys recognize that the distinction between someone who is a documented non-citizen and an undocumented non-citizen is simply a piece of paperwork. And these guys refuse to entertain the notion of said paperwork ever being given out to people, assuming that if you are at any point, a non-citizen, naturalized or not, you are just not a real American and you can be deported and you should be deported. That's the point. That's it. That's it. So when people say, like, why don't they come the right way? Like, this is a person who actually is going through the process. This is a person that was going through the process and went through the process and got protections against being deported. Asylum seekers are here legally. Do you understand? Asylum seekers are here legally. When people say, oh, no, don't care, they're non-citizens, like, they are here legally.
Do you really believe the Supreme Court?
I'm talking.
Do you
now.
really believe the Supreme
you need
Court
to stop. I'm talking now.
doesn't think he
Does
should be
any of
returned?
you-
Why was it unanimous?
You're done. Does any of you know the answer to the question? Does any of you? You've been talking about it for days.
You all would deport him again, no?
He would be arrested.
Okay.
He'd be put in confinement. He would be deported the second time to El Salvador again because there's no withholding order for an alien who's a member of a foreign terrorist organization, number one. Number two is the gang that he's a member of doesn't exist in El Salvador anymore. So what you're asking for is to be deported twice. But additionally, if we chose to pretend, just pretend, that the withholding order was real, he would be deported to a different country. So, for example, he could be deported to Egypt. So I'm just trying to understand, is it your view?
No, that's not how that. Why would that happen? Like, this is psychotic. I don't.
In other words, you have to find a country that would be willing to take a MS-13 member from El Salvador. So I'm trying to understand from you all is
Not an MS-13
So if he came
member.
back and under our laws, he was then deported to Egypt or
If he had actually done something severe enough to be deported, then yes, he would not be deported to El Salvador. He would be deported to a different country. Having said that, he has done no crimes. So why would he ever be deported? The only thing that the courts have actually agreed on is that he should not be deported. He has done nothing that is deportable, and that he definitely should not be deported to El Salvador. That's what the courts have declared. And yet this administration, in direct violation of previous court orders, did deport him for no reason whatsoever, falsely claimed that he was MS-13, and also deported him to the one country that the previous court hearings had determined he should not be deported to.
to Somalia. Would you then be saying, great, I'm so glad that you deported him to another country? Is that what you'd all be saying?